Hitman is, at its core, a puzzle game. It's easy to mistake it for an action game, as is the whole stealth game genre, but really, they're all just unconventional puzzle boxes. That's fundamentally the basis of Hitman's design. It embraces this idea that stealth games are a subgenre of puzzle games and runs with it. Compared to other types of puzzle, where your goal is to find one specific solution or trick, stealth games are a lot more loose in that there's usually any number of solutions for any given problem, and Hitman perfectly understands this. In a very broad sense, you could go in guns blazing, or you could disguise yourself to get into somewhere, or you could find an alternative route to get through, but within each of those there are so many more options. For example, let's look at the guards in front of the mansion in Sapienza. Starting with the most obvious and simplest option, you could literally just walk up and blast them.
Yeah, that's not gonna work, buddy.
Cool, now you're in, but that'll create a further mess that you'll have to go through, so you could try something else. Maybe taking a sniper rifle up to the clock tower, shooting them, and then just walking in again. That also works, but there's now either going to be guards charging down the sniper spot, or a commotion at their corpses. Another method, maybe just place a bomb over to the side of the gate, blow it up, and sneak in while they're distracted. Or you could use a remote explosive duct to blow them up without seeming suspicious. Or you could poison them to move them from the gate. Or you could drop guns near them so they have to take them to a storage place, or any number of other things. Of course, if getting rid of the guards is too much work, bypassing them is just as much of an option. You could instead disguise yourself as a mansion cook, or a flower deliveryman, or one of your target's therapists, or a scientist working in the bioweapon lab below the mansion, which are all just as effective. That being said, why even bother with the front gate in the first place? If your goal is the bioweapon lab, just breach the weak exterior wall or use a keycard to bust in. For the mansion, you could go to the roof of a nearby apartment and drop right in. Alternatively, just climb around the ruined tower nearby and you've accessed the mansion just as easily as if you had blasted your way through, but with less trouble further in. Maybe combine two methods. If you don't want to get frisked, get the flower deliveryman disguise and climb in. If you want a guard disguise, distract one, take his clothes, and go right through while the other's none the wiser. This is one tiny section of one level of the game, and there's at least a dozen different ways to approach it. Spread that out over a whole level and you've got such a massive amount of variety with so many methods of approach that no single run ever has to be the same. The level's challenges encourage you to experiment with kill methods too. I'm going to avoid going into another list of possible solutions to a puzzle, but considering the main objective of any given level is the kill target puzzle, it's safe to say that there are even more methods and opportunities to take out a target than there are for the mini puzzles that make up every level, like the front gate. No matter how well designed any given segment of any given level is though, it's nothing without map design that's good enough to actively support the depth that they wanted to go for, and this is where Hitman really excels. It's been said many times by many different people, but the levels in the entire World of Assassination trilogy are some of the best levels made in the entire medium of video games. To support any given solution while still having a setting make sense as both a video game level that's fun to play and a semi-accurate simulacrum of the real world is a Herculean task, but they pulled it off remarkably well. I think the core of what makes the level design good is the social stealth system. The design for a game where you can't hide in plain sight is going to be completely different, generally filled with waist-high objects or shadowy corners to lurk in, but because the whole idea with Hitman is that Agent 47 is kinda just a guy in a place, they're able to take a lot more risks with the levels. In any other game, a giant fashion show happening in your mission area would be more of a set piece, something that's going on in the background while you're doing the main objective, but in Hitman, 47 can and will pop ass on the catwalk. There's not a single part of a level that's wasted, nothing that's there just to be decoration or just to be functional for gameplay, and as a result it all feels so much more real. This is something that the first game, more so than either of the other two games, absolutely nailed. Let's talk about how targets, the main objective, interact with the map's design. Any given target is one of two types, either a fortress, which involves the person of interest being tucked away under a number of layers of security at all times, or a roamer, who walks around a much broader and often more easy to access area. For a quick example of the fortress target, let's look at Dahlia Margolis in Paris. She only exists on the top floor of the palace, where the auction is taking place, so getting to her is a matter of getting past the security on the second floor and the security on the third floor. Naturally, there are a number of ways to go about this, but the idea is that there isn't a way to access Margolis without bypassing at least one obstacle. The other type, the roamer, is best demonstrated by the other target in Paris, Viktor Novikov.
Head of Sanguine and ringleader of Iago. Quite the resume.
You see him as soon as you walk into the building for the first time, and then he's never far from a common area. He's standing at the bar among the crowd, or he's in the backstage area of the fashion show, or he's chilling in the open room with the staircases, or he's bitching about the amuse-bouches in the kitchen. Compared to the fortress targets, where getting to them is the main problem, the roamers are far more about finding a way to isolate them or take them out covertly. So that's the foundation for any given map: a roaming target, a fortress target, and a map that fits the two together. They do iterate on this idea though, because it'd be boring if they didn't. Sapiens' two human targets are both roamers contained within a fortress, as they both roam the mansion grounds, but getting into the mansion is its own task, while the virus target is a fortress that doesn't move at all. Marrakesh contains two separate fortresses, and Colorado has 3 roamers in the fortress. Hokkaido puts a bit of a twist on the core idea by making the doors work based on 47's disguise, so even the common areas that contain the roamers sometimes feel more fortressy because the security is pretty locked down. Because of this, no map feels the same as any other. Sapiens is always going to have this prep phase before you go into the mansion proper, whereas Marrakesh is always going to have you going on a long jog to get from target to target, and Hokkaido is always going to involve finding complicated routes to get past the much tighter security. The most prominent and easiest ways to accomplish the goal of the puzzles, either isolating a roamer or getting inside a fortress, tend to be the mission stories. These are much more curated methods to access your target, often containing a special kill method at the end, such as suffocating your target with a pillow or kicking them off a ledge while doing yoga. While these are certainly cool and fun to do the first time, I can't help but feel like a lot of the time they're just the best solution for going through a map. Looking at Bangkok, for example, the mission story in which you poison the atrium requires virtually no effort and will allow you to near instantly kill both of your targets with total ease. Alternatively, you could do the drummer mission story, which involves knocking out one guy, walking up through security, and then kicking Jordan Cross off a ledge. All of the difficulty in this one is contained in knocking out the drummer. Everything else is automatic. The suite cleaning mission story also involves the target, Ken the Brick Morgan in this case, waving off everybody other than one easily KOable guard for a comically easy kill opportunity. This is, to me, the biggest issue in the game. The fact that the main kill methods are also the most optimal in terms of risk versus reward is very lacking. It means that the player isn't encouraged to engage with some of the more unconventional kill methods unless they're trying to do the challenges, because simply following the mission stories will usually be good enough to get you a Silent Assassin rating. Admittedly, this is somewhat personal taste, but I feel like it's important for a game to hit more of a nice middle ground between encouraging you to learn the systems and offering fun things. Having them be for all intents and purposes separated out into challenges for mechanics and mission stories for fun is kinda clumsy. Thankfully, this is something that was improved upon massively in the second game.
What in the world? Is this yours? Hey, you dropped something.
Pacify the bastard!
Don't even think about
The basic mechanics, and by extension the design philosophy, of Hitman 2 is mostly the same as the first game. There have been a couple of additions, like the ability to hide in bushes, which single-handedly took Colorado from comfortably the worst map in the game to just one of the worst maps in the game, but for the most part, Hitman 2 is a refinement and iteration on the previous game. Starting with the maps, it's clear that the developers got comfortable enough with the format of roamer and fortress targets that they wanted to design the second game's maps to mix it up as much as possible. Hawke's Bay starts out without you even having a target. Miami has a target sit in a car for half the map. Mumbai involves hunting down a target that's completely unidentified. Whittleton Creek requires you to search around for clues. The game is constantly presenting these new ideas as far as what qualifies as a Hitman map, which is much more interesting. There's also a bit of a shift in terms of how the disguises interact with the maps. Previously, maps were designed to be somewhat layered, like there's a staff uniform that works in the basement and first floor of Paris but not the second and third, or there's a guard uniform on just about every map that doesn't work inside of the fortress target's area, like the resort security guards in Hokkaido, but it's not quite like that anymore. Instead, the way the disguises work is a lot more zone-based. Looking at Santa Fortuna, for example, there are 4 types of guard: the street guards, the coca field guards, the cave guards, and the mansion guards. The street guard disguise, being the most immediately available, is generally the weakest, but it'll still serve you perfectly well for taking out one target and making headway into other areas of the map that are a little more restricted, such as the construction site or the caves overlooking the coca fields. The cave guards are generally not allowed anywhere other than the caves in public areas, but at the same time, none of the other guards are allowed in the cave. The coca field guard is kind of an in-between of these two. The disguise isn't particularly hard to get due to the thick-ass vegetation that lets you freely knock them out, but the only extra area it gets access to over the street guard is the coca fields. The mansion guard is arguably the best, but that comes with the drawback that it's supposed to be the hardest of the guard outfits to get. Most of the mansion guards come in pairs. An opportunity to isolate, knock out, and strip one of them isn't particularly common, so there's a little more legwork required to get this disguise. Or, alternatively, you could just get it off a dead guy. That works too. What's most important though are the targets. While the fortress roamer dichotomy does still exist, they're a lot less attached to that formula. One of Mumbai's targets, the Maelstrom, is a roamer on paper, but because he's supposed to be in hiding and thus unrecognizable, you have to first find a way to identify him before you can take him out. This could be a matter of getting into the street gang's hideout to meet with him, or finding a picture and running all around the streets to see if any given person is the guy you're looking for, or slitting the throat of a suspicious sounding customer at the barbershop. But there's not a way to just start the mission, shoot him, and run away like there is for, say, Yuki Yamazaki. As far as fortress targets go, we can look at Janus on Whittleton Creek. The thing about American suburbs is that they're very unimposing places, so it wouldn't make sense for there to be a highly fortified complex full of guards. As a result, it's very easy to assassinate Janus. The map's pretty small, and 47's a pretty good shot, so you could just climb the nearby treehouse, wait until he's on his back porch, and pop him. That'll only get you so far though, because the map also requires you to collect evidence of Janus's ties to the Constant, the main villain of World of Assassination, meaning your attempt to avoid getting up close and personal with your target will likely result in you going into his house anyways to find some kind of clue. It's an interesting spin on the idea of how required a fortress is to make the formula still work, because once you learn the map a little more, it becomes very easy to bypass completely by simply getting clues from outside of that one specific house. I don't want to call it a deconstruction of the original concept, but what Hitman 2's map design represents is pretty close to that. They could have just shat out another half dozen formulaic maps with one target that's tucked away in a secure building and another that walks around in common areas, but the choice to instead actively build on that concept and make Hitman 2 into something that can be a little more avant-garde with the structure made for what I think is the best game in the trilogy. The DLC maps deserve special attention because they're both pretty interesting as far as how they manipulate the formula. New York has one target all the way at the top of the bank, making the whole map into a fortress, but you also have to steal a server or collect a number of drives that let you access the server, which either adds in 2 roaming targets or a target in the complete opposite direction of the original objective. Depending on which approach you take, the whole map's design changes. Either it's a set of fortified roamers like Scale and Sapienza, or it's 2 fortresses like Marrakesh, but in a much more tight map to avoid the dull-ass running between objectives that map's design causes. The Maldives isn't as interesting in that sense, more so in the sense that the physical structure of the map is very neat. Because the map is set on a tiny island resort in the tropics, it's extremely flat, which means that if you've been relying on shoot and run strats, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Guards are going to be able to see you from just about anywhere. This directly encourages you to experiment with more Hitman-y ways to take out the targets, and considering this map has some of the best kill methods in the game, it's a perfect map to do so. I avoided going too into mission stories for this game because Hitman 2 is more of a stepping stone from the first game's somewhat restrictive mission stories into the third game's significantly improved version.
Take the shot. Over.
Target is down. Over.
By the time Hitman 3 rolled around, I feel like they had mostly figured out mission stories, especially how to make them part of the mission in a much more elegant way rather than just an opportunity to kill a target. The perfect example of this is Dartmoor's detective mission story, which is arguably the best in the game. It's used as a storytelling tool, creating this depth to the level's character that no other stage in the game has. You get things here and there to deepen the target's backstories, like Miami's Flamingo guy or Scale's Blake Nathaniel, but this mission story is the absolute pinnacle of the concept. In a way, you forget you're playing a Hitman game. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama of the level and trying to figure out who killed old what's-his-name that you'll gradually start shifting towards that being your main objective instead of coming here to shoot the target in the head and run away. Even with the end goal of killing the target, there are multiple different ways that you can do it within this mission story. For example, if you tell her the true culprit, she'll go chill by a very pushable ledge, and if you rule the death as a suicide, she'll jump off the ledge herself. But it's never as free as previous mission stories because you have to put in the legwork to eventually solve the murder, and that's far more fun in its own right than the free kills from the first game. Even the ones that are a little more guided in Hitman 3 still have some element to them that makes them more interesting, like the relatively tight timing on Mendoza's Grape Crusher kill method to avoid killing Diana while still getting your target, and that makes for a far more fun game. The map design of Hitman 3 compared to Hitman 2's experimentation feels more like a refinement of the design ideas, taking these concepts that have existed since Paris and working them into much more fluid and cohesive maps that as a result are much more fun to play. The maps are still very easy to navigate, but they've gained this depth that makes them feel almost labyrinthine. Like, the way they're designed takes all of the stuff from the previous 2 games, packs it into a much more efficient package, and zhuzhes it up with the natural experience that comes from having developed the same game for nearly a decade at this point for arguably the best designed pack of maps in the trilogy. Once you get to Berlin, it's clear they were just flexing. It's like they wanted to make a map that has every single miscellaneous kill opportunity that they couldn't fit anywhere else, for example outsniping a sniper, so they did that by slapping 15 targets onto the map with at least one interesting kill opportunity for all of them. Somehow, despite the fact that this should be really rough, it's absolutely incredible. The level flows so seamlessly between every target, there's never the need to take an inconvenient, circuitous route because there's gonna be something there for you. Kill the guy on the club roof, and you can take the skylight down to the main floor with ease. Take out a target or two in the biker building, there's like 4 separate exits that'll put you in a place that's perfect for taking out another target. It's absolutely incredible. That being said, I think they sometimes fall into a whole new trapping. Because the maps are now designed in such a way to accommodate all these interesting mission stories and set pieces, they can occasionally feel a little more, for lack of a better term, stilted. I've never been the biggest fan of the Dubai map, mainly because it feels like the route to the penthouse is always overly precarious. Like they intentionally put a ton of guards to block off the walking routes and made the parkour routes skirt along the outside of the building or along an elevator shaft to instill this feeling that you're at the very top of a skyscraper. Similarly, that detective mission story on Dartmoor kinda overshadows the rest of the level. It's still a good stage, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I just get this feeling that the level was designed with the set piece in mind rather than the other way around, and a lot of the other things in the level, like the graveyard mission story or the photographer mission story, have been put into fill space. This isn't as much the case in Berlin, Chongqing, and Mendoza, but even on those maps I can't help but think that the developers were eager to shift to making something new, something that would allow them to experiment with level design that didn't have to be as open-ended while still allowing for a ton of interesting variety. This is more or less what I expect from 007 First Light, which is releasing very soon. The Carpathian Mountains train, the final level in the trilogy, is a perfect example of this. As far as versatility in this map goes, there is none. This level sees 47 wake up on a moving train with no gear at all as he has to fight his way through Illuminati agents and heavily armored guards to destroy the evil organization and save himself. It's a straight shot to the final target, but everybody along the way also counts as a target too, so you can blast him if you want. In the level, there are all these mini puzzles like the gate, but reconfigured. Now there's at most 3 solutions. Either disguise yourself and sneak by in a more traditional stealth format, or blast the fuckers, and occasionally there might be a flashbang here and there you can use, as a treat. The point of this mission is entirely, 100%, to be a set piece, in the same way as the final levels of every Hitman game before it. This level is the World of Assassination trilogy's version of shooting up 47's own funeral in Blood Money, or blasting through clones in the lab in Codename 47, or getting out of the hotel in Contracts. So in series tradition, it had to match that energy, and facilitating that is the whole point of the level. You can see that they tried to keep some options open. It's still very possible to do the mission Silent Assassin suit only, but it's really easy to see that the design philosophy for this level was primarily making every car of the train its own unique and engaging puzzle with a limited number of solutions, rather than making a whole level designed to accommodate a massive amount of different gameplay styles. So, long story short for Hitman 3, these are the best designed maps in the trilogy, but I don't think they were able to quite reach the potential that they had compared to Hitman 2. At least that was the case until Freelancer released.
Alright, let's go again. On your marks. Ready, set, execute.
Hitman 3 was converted to Hitman World of Assassination in January 2023, and with it came the Freelancer mode. To me, this is one of the 3 best roguelikes ever made, and even if it weren't connected to the main campaign of the game, it would still be extremely high in my personal best games ever made list. The intentional open-ended design of most of the maps in the game pairs perfectly with the objectives for the map being scattered all over the place, and because the whole map is designed as a series of mini-puzzles connected together to form one big puzzle, there's virtually no potential target that isn't fun to get to. Sure, you occasionally get an annoying combination like Silent Assassin no guns with a target in the Miami Park, but by and large, Freelancer is a game mode that takes all of the systems of Hitman and all of the incredible map design of Hitman and says, here you go, play this infinitely, it's always going to be fun, that's how good we made this game. I've probably put a couple hundred hours into Freelancer alone because I know when I launch it, I'm going to spend 20 hours that week just playing Freelancer. It's just that fun. Hitman World of Assassination is one of the best games ever made. With some of the best levels in the medium as a whole and perfect design to go right along with those maps, it's an absolute triumph in just about every possible way that a stealth game can be successful. I've been playing this game since April 2017, at this point for almost 900 hours across the 3 games, and there's still challenges to do, still Freelancer campaigns to complete, still elusive targets to kill. I can't understate just how great I think this game is, and the fact that it's managed to be such a massive success even through a consistent 10 years of multiple of the worst purchase models I've ever seen is a testament to the quality of Hitman World of Assassination. That and the always online stuff. That sucks too. Game's still good though.